Hi, I'm Reece Southern, and today we're going to smoke an old fashioned 7 ways. First of all, smoking an old fashioned 7 ways is a terrible idea, and we're just doing this for laughs. But here we go. Step 1, choosing your whiskey or bourbon. So first up, on the more approachable side of things, we have Buffalo Trace bourbon. So this was introduced into market in 1999. So not very young, but still quite young by the sounds of things. It's coming from Frankfort, Kentucky, one of the oldest continuous distilleries in American history. And this is more on the approachable side for your old fashioned. And that would be in, it's cocktail friendly, it's more affordable. It comes in at 40%, so it's a little easier drinking. We have a little bit here to taste. On the nose, I get, you definitely get a little bit of that charred wood. There is sort of a fresh, almost grassiness to this, as a young sort of age. Also, you get that slight acetone nose that comes in through the mid. So you may as well dip in and taste. Definitely no heat there. Slight residual pull around the sides of the palate, which is quite nice. Obviously, it's a little rougher around the edges because we are hitting that affordability, lovely price point. You get a little bit of woodiness, but it's mainly just like a touch of spice through the mid as well. So that's Buffalo Trace. That's the first choice you could make if you were so inclined. Up second, we have Wild Turkey 101 bourbon. Now, you'll see that it's 101 proof or 50.5% alcohol, meaning it's a little tougher, a little higher ABV than our Buffalo Trace, which only came in at about 40. So with this, you're gonna have a little more forgiveness in your dilution. It's gonna be tougher in your cocktails, and that might be a great starting or jumping off bourbon for a lot of you home bartenders. With that extra ABV, if you're not getting your shakes and stirs down correctly, you might find that this is a little more forgiving in your cocktails if you've accidentally added a little too much water through your dilution process. Its namesake is said to have arisen from when a gentleman by the name of Thomas McCarthy took a few sample vials from the warehouse out to a wild turkey hunting trip. And it was so popular among his friends that everybody kept asking for that wild turkey bourbon. So after around 1942, he started bottling and labeling it as wild turkey. Now, it is important to mention that wild turkey does have certain different proofs. It starts at 86 proof, and moves on to 101. We chose this one obviously because we like it. Dive into those tasting notes. On the nose, we get kind of like a fresh concrete dust, as if you've taken a broom and swept the floor and you get a little puff of that dust come back in your face. It's almost like that minerality that really rocks you. I'm getting a lot of baking spice notes, some cranberries, raisins. That dustiness is still very forefront there. You get a little bit of that burn from the ABV, but not too much. Oh yeah, on the palate you really start to taste some of that heat come through. But it finishes quite dry with the lovely dried fruits through the finish. This would make a lovely old fashioned just off of the final taste of that. Okay, up third, we have Elijah Craig's small batch bourbon. Now what that means is they're selecting a small batch of barrels from the warehouse and blending them together to bottle, and we get this bad boy right here. Now this jumps up a little from the last two that we were looking at. We move more into a bit of a higher price point with a little different sense of flavors. Aged around 8 to 12 years. This bourbon gets its namesake from a preacher by the name of Elijah Craig, who, as legend says, used to serve his God's water, being this guy here, to his morning congregation, which they had a pretty phenomenal turnout. So you could only imagine that he was getting his congregation pretty litty first thing. We'll jump right into the tasting notes. I get a lot of that drippy caramel, like off of a caramel apple. It's almost like that slight Granny Smith acidity to it too. There's a lot of vanilla coming through, and you get a touch of that 47% ABV on the nose. Definitely an easy start, turning into like an almost dry charcoal finish. Definitely like a little bit of acidity there, but I find it skews a touch sweet as well. This would be used if you were looking for a little bit of something different in your old fashioned. I would suggest using this if you were looking for a sipping bourbon that you also wanted to cocktail with. A very easy style of drinking bourbon that has a lot of complexity. Now up fourth, we have Angel's Envy. Now this is taking a bit of a jump up in price point wise, and it's also a great start for me to talk about mash bills in bourbon. Now we all know, or if you don't, that to be considered bourbon whiskey, we need to have over 51% of corn in our mash bill. Now what a mash bill is it's the culmination of ingredients and grains that come together to make up what the whiskey is. It's what gives it its underlying flavor and how we find like what the whiskey is going to taste like. Now in Angel's Envy's case, we have 72% corn in the mash bill, followed by 18% rye, which makes it kind of a spicy boy. And then finally 10% malted barley, which gives it that nice sort of thick mouthfeel through the sides of the palate and a little bit of that grippiness in the cheeks. This one, also hailing from Louisville, Kentucky, is a little different in the sense that they finish this bourbon in port casks. Now, it's one of the only bourbons that I'm aware of that uses a finishing process in their line to make their whiskey or their bourbon. For me, it adds a lot of a dry finish to the end of it. You get a slight astringent touch through the mid palate, but it is a lengthy dryness. We can dive into our tasting notes, and obviously on the nose, you get a little bit of heat coming from that 43.3, so we're even lower than 47%, but still it holds up very well to the nose. I'm getting a lot of dried raisins and like cranberries almost from that port finish. Has like a slight caramel undertone to it as well. That sort of sickly sweet almost coming off on the nose. On the palate, it's just a fruity, spicy boy. You're getting a lot of that rye grain come through and give you that sort of spiciness through the mid or the middle of your tongue. And then obviously that dryness like sucks your cheeks in for the finish. It also like lends very well to its barrel finish, and you can taste the impartation that that final port cask has put on this bourbon. I would suggest if you were looking for something to sip as well as something to cocktail with, you could turn towards Angel's Envy. You might find that at the price point it's a little much, but if you're looking for something super interesting and different, definitely give it a shot, because the port cask finish on it shines through very lovely. Oh fuck, start again. Now for our fifth choice, Woodford Reserve Bourbon. This is what we call in the bar industry a cold brown. It's something that you may recognize, that you may have in your home bar, or you may have drunk before. I really like Woodford Reserve. I think it's because of how much they focus on the char for their barrels. Now coming out of not the same distillery, but under the same corporate banner as Jim Beam, who owns their own cooperage and makes all the barrels for the Beam Distillery and for the Woodford Reserve. They get to play around a lot more with their finishes on the barrel or their chars, which is ultimately what influences the whiskey a lot. depending on how much they char it is depending on how much of the product actually gets into the wood to take some of those flavors and sugars from the wood. It also has a lot to do with the finish and the darkness and the color that comes out at the end of your whiskey making process. Obviously at Woodford, they focus highly on the more intense end of the char, moving up to like the higher numbers, giving it more of a deeper, richer color. On the nose, you can definitely discern that it is a toasty boy. They've come in hot, and they've really put the deepness into those barrels, which reflects on the nose. A lot of caramel and vanilla comes through. I get fresh sliced figs. It's very, very fruity. On the palate, it almost moves into like a sort of fresh stone fruit that's just fallen from the tree and you picked up off the ground. I get a lot of that fig flavor and that raisin come through. You can taste some of the charcoal on the finish through the dryness, and it's still a little bit spicy. This follows a mash bill of 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. So you're getting a nice spicy finish with a lovely sort of grippy, oily mouthfeel through it. It's a very bold style of bourbon, which would be great sipped over ice or just by itself. I find that in an old fashioned, it sort of loses out to the baking spice notes and the clove that you get from your Angostura, and the sweetness from the sugar often, it doesn't lend well to this. I would suggest using Woodford in more of a shaken style cocktail with citrus because it has a very unique finish. I find it kind of loses itself in a stirred down style of old fashioned drink. And this is what we're looking at on maybe the higher end of a price point as well. It comes in around 60 to 70 bucks depending where you're shopping. So it may be something that you don't want to experiment with when you're just starting out bartending or just starting out in your home bar. Still though, a very interesting whiskey and a great look into the impartation of flavors that different chars can put on barrels and onto bourbons. Now, last but not least, we figured just for funsies, we'd show you what's on the highest end of things, and pretty much just because the three of us wanted to drink it. We have Pappy Van Winkle 12 year. Now, this comes out of the same distillery as Buffalo Trace. It is on the higher end of things being because of its sought afterness. It is an allocation, meaning that the brand chooses where it goes. So we're choosing to drink it and do a couple of tasting notes for you guys today. This is the 12 year, arguably one of the better ones in my opinion. Now, it depending on where it comes from the rick house or the warehouse where the barrels are stored is what whiskey defines coming from that distillery. We're drinking the 12 year, so I mean, for me on the nose, I get a little bit of fruit, a touch of stone fruit, to be honest, a little bit of citrus fruit, a touch of like grapefruit zest, but I'm talking like pithy grapefruit zest, like thick on the back.
The pithiest.
The pithiest.
Pithy boys.
Pithy boys. Obviously, like, they don't really tell you, but it has quite an acetone nose, so it leads me to believe that there's a lot of trace in there. Maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't try and lead you astray. Or I would. On the palate, vanilla and caramel ride very far at the front. It has quite a short finish, which I don't really like if you're going to be paying so much for a whiskey. Pappy is a great idea and a great hype-driven bourbon that sort of skyrocketed into new heights thanks to its popularity and put bourbon back on the map quite a few years ago. I think that if you do have the opportunity to try it at a cheaper price point, it is something that you definitely should do. It is very hyped, so you definitely want to give that a shot at one point. Do not mix this in an old fashioned, or I mean, like, it's your own adventure. I can't come to your house and take it out of your hands. But I would say that it wouldn't hold up that well in cocktails, and it should be enjoyed like rarer stuff should, sipped neat or opened with a slight touch of water. I find this very low on the ABV style, so it doesn't have as much of that alcohol through the palate, so I don't really find water necessary for this. But if you are a kind of person that enjoys your whiskeys more on the diluted style to open them up, then definitely be my guest and go ahead. If you do have a bottle of this, you've probably found it either in the States or somehow in the open market. I wouldn't suggest using what little you have in cocktails, but again, I'm not going to come to your house and pry it out of your hands. Or maybe I might. Now, smoking your whiskey. You're going to need a couple of things. A vessel that you can close, like so. Today we're using a smoking gun, which is pretty easy to get. You can find them on Amazon. And you'll need a blowtorch of such. So what you want to do is pour your whiskey that you've chosen for your old fashioned into your vessel. We're going to set it up like so, turn the gun on, place our cork, and start the fire on the chips. Today we're using cherry wood for everything. So we want to get a nice torch on the wood so the smoke plume is nice and thick. There we are. We're going to turn that off, pull the cord out, and like so, we leave it to settle. And in a few minutes, after the smoke clears, we'll have smoked whiskey.
Step 2, choose your sugar. We're starting here with regular refined white sugar here. Adds sweetness to cocktails. You can make easy simple syrups out of it. It's really good in other cocktails if you're balancing citrus. In an old fashioned, it doesn't add much flavor, so we're not going to use it. Next up, we've got demerara sugar. It's not refined at all almost. There's still a lot of molasses in it. Adds a lot of nice baking spice characteristics. Works really well with those flavor characteristics of the bourbon. But the original old fashions didn't have demerara syrup, so we're not going to use it either. Last up, we've got brown sugar. Obviously, we've got a brown sugar cube here. Like the demerara sugar, there is still some molasses in this, so it does add those nice characteristics that help complement the bourbon that we're going to be using. And as it was said to be used in the original old fashioned, this is the one we're going to be using.
Okay, and then just hold it.
Okay.
Or you can do the same thing with this one and just hold that.
Let's do that. All right, we already know that we're going to be using the sugar cubes for it, but because we're not very smart, we're going to show you how to smoke the other sugars as well, so you can make a simple syrup if you so choose. Smokey Boi number 2, and our smoked old fashioned sugar cubes here.
This is the dumbest idea we've ever had.
We've had some dumb ideas, this tops it. 3 smoked sugars.
Tastes like burnt marshmallow. Oh.
That smells really bad. Smells like a bushfire. And there, ladies and gentlemen, like Al alluded to before, we have smoked Demerara simple syrup at 1:1 or equal parts, and we have smoked simple syrup at 1:1 equal parts, and our smoked brown sugar cubes that we'll be using.
Step 3, which in hindsight probably should have been step 1, smoking your ice. So you just got a little bit of glass, sealable container, and smoke your water. Probably let it sit for about 5 to 6 minutes once the fully engulfed in smoke. Want to cut it? We've let our water sit for about 5 minutes, fully taking all that smoke. And let's pour into our taste. Step 4, choosing your bitters. For the sake of this, we're going to use classic Angostura bitters, probably the most known bitters. Bitters are essentially known or as snake oils, essentially just macerated botanicals and herbs in alcohol that were designed as a cure-all. Angostura traditionally being invented for general sickness for the Venezuelan army. Angostura gets its name from a city that used to be in Venezuela and now goes by a different name. That city has since changed its name. But essentially just designed for seasickness. But during Prohibition, the Angostura Company convinced the American government that they could be used as a medicinal use, which is why it's still available in places like Safeway and Shoppers Drug Mart today, that you can actually buy this ingredient. This is the one ingredient that we're actually excited to smoke because we think it might actually taste good.
You reckon it'll taste good?
I reckon it'll taste great. For reference, if you ever want to do a great shot at a bar, you can go shoot Angostura bitters.
Do not listen to you.
Now once this is fully smoked, we're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes.
5 minutes of flavor.
It's intense.
The color is actually like it's changing the color of the smoke.
It looks like espresso.
Yeah, it's like
It's getting a crema.
It is getting a crema.
Crema. It looks like it's staining the smoke.
It is. Or maybe it's just coming up into the legs on the glass, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the legs on the glass. I'm excited for this one.
I'm gonna go on record and say this is the dumbest thing we've done.
I'm excited for this one. It's very good. The smoke's a little much, but you still get all the Ango flavors in the finish. Like the Ango still overpowers the smoke after the first couple seconds.
It's actually not as terrible as I thought it was gonna be, to be
Yeah.
honest.
It's still pretty Ango forward.
I would say that if you were gonna do this, then I would smoke it for maybe like a minute and a half max. Are you gonna do a shot of it?
Yeah. It's actually, it also with more space, it opens it up more. It actually gets more angry.
It's actually kind of bad.
Yeah. Smoke Trinidad sours. Yeah, not bad at all. Like, still, I think we smoked it for too long for sure. A lot of like burnt wood quality.
I would not
It's like
shoot
supple.
that.
But cedary.
Yeah, go less on the smoke, but still, like,
Yeah.
by far the least horrible ingredient that we've smoked so far.
Yeah. Or ever.
Or ever. Step 5.
Smoke your garnish. Can't smoke it 7 ways if you don't smoke your garnish.
Now essentially we're just doing this because we can. So we're gonna do it two ways. We're gonna smoke a whole orange to see what happens, and then smoke the peels as well alongside it to see which one gains more of that delicious
Smoky
charcoal
flavor.
Smokey Boi flavor.
Oh, this is a slippery boy.
Oh yeah. Alright, so we're gonna take this off. This is called a cloche. Or a, yeah, I don't really know what the name is for it. So here we have an abundance of peels that Al has nicely peeled for us. So we're just gonna stack those alongside around that orange. Oh, yeah, get that flavor on there. Nice and citrusy. There we are. Look at that. Now you want it so you can't see anything on the inside of the dome.
Make it a hazy boy.
Yeah, make it a hazy boy. Right, kill that. Oh, look at that. That's gonna taste terrible.
Smoke garnish.
Oh my god. Now, we've left it for about 2 minutes. We're gonna do the taste test to see the difference between a whole smoked orange and orange peels.
For science.
For science.
Let's get the orange oils here. Nice smoky.
Well, it smells smoky. Okay. It still has a little bit of that citrus to it.
This one doesn't.
That one doesn't?
There's no citrus in this.
The one from the actual orange smells just like smoke. Fucking hell.
Is that a Smokey Boi?
Oh god. It's like still kind of like sweet citrusy, but the end just tastes so like chewing on charcoal.
The way you're eating, you look like a rabbit being tortured.
Oh, this is the most terrible idea we've ever had.
All right, consensus?
No.
Which one are we going to use for the old fashioned?
The whole orange.
Yeah, I vote whole orange.
Okay. Step 6, smoking your glass. So here we have 3 different ways to smoke your glass. If you are doing this at home, please be safe. Do whatever is best for you. We're going to show you 3 ways to do it here. So the first step, if you're lucky enough to have a barrel head or wood stave, this actually was a barrel for some whiskey, just light this wood on fire and pop it off the glass. All the smoke will go into the glass and coat the side of the glass. You will, however, get a small amount of charcoal on the rim of your glass, which may be what you're looking for if you want that smoky flavor. You can also wipe that off with the orange peel, which we'll get more into when we actually make the cocktail. The next step is using a cloche to smoke the glass, so smoking the entire glass. You also could, if you wanted to, put an entire cocktail in here while doing this to help get those extra flavors.
You have to turn the gun on.
I think you've done this before.
This guy smokes.
This guy smokes big time, but it's a different episode. So you kind of just want the same things before with the oranges. You just want to fully incorporate the cloves so you can't see the glass, do as much smoke in there as possible. And then lastly, using a heat-proof dish and some wood chips, if you can find these, to smoke the glass. Make sure your dish is heat-proof and make sure not to blow it out because you will just send wood chips everywhere at the end if you want it to stay burning. Now you have 3 ways to smoke a glass.
Now, step 7, assemble this monstrosity. So we're going to follow the same principles of building a normal old fashioned. except we're just going to use all of our smoked ingredients incorporated into one, and then smoke 3 glasses, smoke the entirety of the cocktail, which is bringing all of our smoke together. So we start by making a nice Angostura slurry with our sugar cubes that have been smoked. Pop those into our mixing jar. We're going to take our smoked Angostura and we're going to do 5 dashes per cocktail. So we're building 3, so I'm going to go all the way up to 15 dashes. Now, it could be important to note now, if you're not using a style of mixing jar like this, that you could add a little bit of water into your mixing vessel to sort of really make those cubes into a nice homogeneous syrup. My counterparts don't really like a little bit of grittiness in their old fashions, but I tell you what, I do. So we're going to grind down our sugar and Angostura into a nice homogeneous syrup. So we're going to grind down our sugar and bitters mixture till it's a nice homogeneous syrup, like so. You can still smell the smoke on that, like, intensely. So once we have a nice syrup like that, we can go ahead and take our smoked whiskey or smoked bourbon. We're going to add 2 ounces per cocktail, so in total this is 6 ounces. Into our mixing jar like so. Next, you want to add ice. So we're going to fill it full with ice. The more ice we have in there, the more control over our dilution, the better off it's going to be. So we fill our jar full of ice like so. And we're going to stir for about 15 seconds or until we reach our ideal dilution. As you can see, the more you stir, you're going to watch your wash line come up the side, and that'll give you an indication of how much water you have stirred into your cocktail. It smells incredibly smoky. There we have it. Give it a quick taste off the back of the spoon. Oh wow. Oh, well. Next, what we're going to do is strain it into our pre-smoked glasses. I'm going to flip these bad boys over like so. And then add in our smoked ice cubes. Slippery little guys. Into our pre-smoked glasses like so. And then we're going to strain our old fashioned over the top, making sure that we're very equal. Sharing is caring. Next, we take our smoked orange. Obviously, we've opted to smoke the entirety of the orange for flavor purposes. We release that from its smoky prison. And we cut ourselves 3 nice large strips. Oh, that smells very, very strange. Then we're going to trim them up nicely so our cocktail looks lovely and presentable. Who doesn't like a lovely presented cocktail? Next, when expressing the zests over your drink, you want to kind of pinch them in your fingers like this. Keep them out of the way so all the oils get on top. And just give it a quick pinch like so. You can twist the zest up like that. Give it a dust around the corner of the rim and then pop it in like so. So again, we pinch, kiss the rim, twist, dunk. Pinch, kiss that rim, twist, dunk. And now, it wouldn't be smoked 7 ways if we didn't do the pièce de la résistance. We're gonna move these out of the way and bring in our dome again. Pop all 3 of these bad boys in the middle. Just fits. Bring our smoking gun back in, and we're going to smoke the entirety of the cocktail after it's been fully assembled. Step 7. Well, the finish of step 7. Smoke the entirety of the cocktail. Again, like the rest of the ingredients, we want to make sure that the dome is fully smoked out. We get a nice haze through there. And there you have it.
Yeah, go for it.
Septa Smoked Old Fashion, boys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That smell better.
It just smells like campfire.
Yeah. It really brings up all the acetone of the whiskey.
Oh my god.
Like, you know it's whiskey, but it's not. You
Don't do this.
Yeah. And if you do it, make sure you use poppy.
That's not good.
That's very, very harsh.
This is the worst drink you've ever made.
I agree with John. It does like bring out like everything that just tastes like it brings everything that tastes like acetone.
Yeah.
It just tastes like fire.
Like, I think there's a bit of fruitiness left from the whiskey. Like, you get a little of that fruit. You do taste a bit of orange, but like it's.
I smell the orange.
I smell the orange for sure. Oh my lord.
It's like a bad camping trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it smells like campfire.
And,
Like, there is a bit of that marshmallow taste, like from the sugar, that like burnt marshmallow flavor we got from the sugar. The Angostura does still come out a bit, but like that's the only ingredient that really stands out to me.
verdict on this one. Try it at home or
No,
not.
never drink this.
Waste of whiskey.
Waste of whiskey. Do not smoke your whiskey.
If you go to a cocktail bar and they offer you this, just leave.
And then, like, it should be a good point to make that, like, you should never smoke your whiskey to start with, ever.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
But if you come to Proof Cocktail Bar, Reese will smoke anything you want. He'll make you one of these if you'd like.
I wouldn't suggest
It's
it,
gonna,
but...
be on their next menu.
Busy Friday?
Oh my god.
Ask for one of these.
7 ways smoked. Set up every glass I have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
That's terrible.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. Done.